Welcome to North Tees and Hartlepool Voices, telling the stories of our people and community in our trust.
My name's Eddie Kennedy, and today we're going to be talking about Trans Awareness Month. What is Trans Awareness Month?
For me, Trans Awareness Month is a time when we can really highlight the experiences of trans people. We want to raise awareness all through the year, but having a specific month really focuses our efforts. It gives people a chance to learn about the challenges and, barriers that the trans community face. But we also want to have a positive note and recognise how much that we've already overcome to be here, and to celebrate that, the value that trans people bring to the world. I think it's really important that we celebrate Trans Awareness Month as an organisation, because we need to be seen that how much we value all of our members of staff, including our trans and non-binary staff. And it's important to show that we're going to stand up and do the right thing. We believe in our staff, our community, our patients, our visitors. We believe they have a right to be treated as human beings.
I think for myself, I just love not just Trans Awareness Month, but there seems to be over the past few years a rise in just these focus on weeks. You've got Trans Awareness Month, but you've got Black History Month, you've got Baby Loss Awareness Week, and things like this. And I think anything that gives us an extra opportunity to be educated, to pique our curiosity, to ask questions, to be informed in a safe way, I think is to be welcomed, because you've got two ends of this story. You've got people that are, say, this month coming up, November, trans. If you're part of that community, then you're living this every day. If there's increasingly those of us, myself included, that have people going through that experience as part of our family, and for us to be better educated, then we can support those in our family sort of a better way. But if you've got no connection at all, then a subject that you know nothing about, it may seem sort of just other or alien or over there, and sometimes that can be a bit scary and a bit cause anxiety. And a week like this, a month like this, a focus like this is an opportunity to safely be curious and ask questions and be informed, so that that's over there comes a little bit closer and oh, that's interesting. And so I welcome any weeks like this, but especially sort of Trans Awareness Week, for all the things that Matt has just said. I think it's really, really, really important for me personally, for the trust, for the hospital, but for society in general, just to sort of shine a light on something that may be at a distance for perhaps a lot of people, and just a bit of knowledge, a bit of sort of experiential truth in there being shared, I think can only be a good thing.
Yeah, I think having a particular time it serves as a conversation starter that we might not be able to have throughout the rest of the year, but it gives you these opportunities to talk about things that you might not have known about, so things that get missed, things like for the trans community about the importance of using the correct pronouns. I think that's one of the things that gets maybe misrepresented or misunderstood, or sort of isn't seen as very important. But for a trans person, your pronouns and even your name is such massively important, because it represents who you are. And somebody using the correct pronouns and the correct name is validating. It means that they respect you, and they respect who you are as a person. And obviously people get it wrong and they make mistakes, because we're only human. But making that effort to get it right, to respect somebody, does make a world of difference. There's a study that the Trevor Project did in 2021, and they surveyed the trans and non-binary youth, and they found that in the previous year, 24% of trans and non-binary youth who pronouns were never respected had attempted suicide. That's nearly a quarter of people who had attempted suicide. And that's not including those who had died by suicide, or those who were self-harming or going through depression or anything like that. That's just 24% had attempted suicide. Now, in the same survey, they found that of the trans and non-binary youth whose pronouns were always or mostly respected, it was 13% had attempted suicide. And obviously that's 13% too many. It should be 0. We want it to be 0. But that's a drop of 11% just by respecting somebody's pronouns. That's just such a huge effort. Just using somebody the right pronouns, calling them he or she or they, is actually potentially life-saving. And I think these are the conversations we don't have day to day during the most of the year. But something like Trans Awareness Month is a time when we can have these conversations and highlight these important facts.
You're getting to the fundamentals of life, though. Like, I have a particular belief that each of us is after what I call the 3 Vs. We're after, we want to be visible, we want to know that we're of some value, and we want to be valid. We want to be seen and heard. We want to know if we are of worth, and we want to know that we make a difference. And something as simple but profound as using the correct pronouns is the difference between being seen and not seen. And so you're immediately made invisible. It undermines your worth. What value do I have if I'm not even being seen correctly? And do I make a difference? Well, I'm not even recognised. And so something as simple as sort of a pronoun cuts to the very heart of who we are. Because the reverse of that is by using the preferred pronoun, you're saying, I see you. You're worth recognising. You do make a difference as you are. The family member is my sister's youngster, and that is transitioning from female to male. And my sister puts it this way, that they've never seen them so relaxed and so themselves. And the way that she explained it to me, I found really helpful. And because sometimes when we hear about, well, are they too young to make such a big decision? And I was having this discussion with my sister, and I said, well, it's not like a decision of what career am I going to pursue, which you may change your mind sort of several times as you're growing older and circumstances change. She said to me, it's more akin to, are you left-handed or right-handed? When they were growing up, they were almost forced, they felt forced that they were right-handed, and now they've discovered, actually I've been left-handed all this time. And life is just so much more natural for them. And it's an undeniable thing to witness. They are so much more relaxed, sociable, and it comes back to this, so much more themselves. Whereas they were almost othered themselves, and now they've found that, oh no, I'm left-handed. I can be myself here. So it's really, really important, and the statistics that you say just back up how important. For those of us that are at a distance, it seems, well, how can such a little thing like a pronoun make such a big difference? But it comes down to fundamental things that are so important and affect us so greatly at times.
Yeah, I think it definitely does. It like you said, it's being seen as that person that you are by the rest of the world. I found it when I was transitioning, especially when I first started, or before I started on hormones, you know, I'd look in the mirror and that person I saw in that mirror wasn't me. But as I went on hormones and my face changed and, you know, I could see these little changes, like, you know, starting to get facial hair, things like that. The more I looked in the mirror, the more I could see myself, and the less I had to sort of squint and like blur my vision to see who I am. And using the right name and pronouns and things like that, show that the world sees you as who you really are. I always remember the very first time I got gendered correctly by a stranger. I was at a market and I bought some popcorn, and all that happened was, you know, the guy gave me my change back and said, "Oh, thanks, mate." And it was brilliant, because it was just like, you know, guys say to each other, they call each other mate, and so he saw me as another man, and I was sort of grinning for the rest of the time around the market, and I remember that so distinctly, and it stuck with me so much, and every time it always stuck me. But I think it's definitely right. I love that analogy about the right and left-handed. It just makes so much sense. It was exactly my experience. I think looking back, I realised that for my whole life, I was kind of trying to be a girl. I was sort of trying to pass as female and forcing myself to fit into that box, even though that was the last place I really wanted to be. But when I came out and when I started living as male, and, you know, started taking the hormones and seeing the changes and getting top surgery, it just felt like such a release, so easier. It just felt more natural. Like, especially like when I got my top surgery, basically a mastectomy and chest reconstruction. And I woke up after the surgery, and the first thing that I did, just instinctively, even though, you know, I was still on however much medication, you know, literally the first thing I did was I touched my chest, and it just felt normal, and it just felt like this is how it's always been, and it just felt so easy. And it wasn't a big epiphany moment, it just felt normal, and that was what was amazing about it. I think something else you said about, you know, people ask, like, you know, when young people come out as trans, and a lot of people think, you know, they're too young to know what their gender is. I always find that curious, because if that child was not transgender, and, you know, it's a little boy who says, "I'm a little boy," we wouldn't question that. We wouldn't ask, you know, are they sure they know their gender? But if that, you know, a person looks like a little boy and says they're a little girl, we question it, and we don't think they have that capacity to know who they are.
On the 20th at 4:00, we're holding a Trans Day of Remembrance service in the chapel at North Tees Hospital at 4 p.m. Now, this is a service that is really, really important, because some of the stuff that Matt's been sharing in the statistics, this is a life and death issue. And we just want to take a moment to stop and remember all those whose lives have been affected by violence, whose lives have been taken by violence, whose lives have been taken by suicide because of the treatment that they have received through no other reason than they're trans. And so it's important to stop and remember and reflect and be part of this dispelling of ignorance that surrounds and breeds some of the fear and some of the violence that's perpetrated in this area. Myself and Matt have put together sort of a short service where people can come and just stand and honour and just remember and reflect on this area. And everyone's invited to come and stand with us sort of at that time, because I think it's really, really important. You can just hear listening to Matt how deeply rooted these things run. It goes to the core of people's beings. It's not playing around. It's real life and death identity issues here, and it's important that we give this space to try and stand sort of against this. One of my favourite programmes on TV at the minute is a comedy called Ted Lasso, and I would recommend it to anyone that hasn't seen it. And Ted Lasso is an incredible character that is really, really inspirational and positive in so many ways. But one of the things that he comes out with is that he tries to base his life on being curious rather than judgmental. And I think that's what we want to sort of encourage. And on the 20th, this Trans Day of Remembrance is part of that invitation to be curious and to stand against judgmentalism that then works out into acts of violence. So that's what's happening on the 20th.
Yeah, I think it's really important part of Trans Awareness Month, remembering and honouring these trans people around the world who've lost their lives to hate and to violence. Like you said, to remind people that it is a life and death situation for a lot of people, not just in other countries, but here too. While I've been preparing for the service, we're going to be reading out some names of people who have died this last year. And the list of trans people who have died this last year is at 400 at least. That's just those who've been recorded. And I was printing off all of these names, and you're reading them and where they're from and how they've died, and it's just quite horrific reading shot, ran over, beaten up and stoned, raped, beaten and dismembered. These are people, they're not just dying because they're trans, they're being murdered and brutally murdered. And it's scary and it's sad because, like I said, it's not just other countries. We can look at other countries and say, oh, it's a problem over there, it's theirs. It's not. It happens here. We've had trans people die in this country, young trans people. Last year we had a young boy called Corey who died from suicide after getting abuse on social media, not just from children, from adults too. He was 14. We had, even in this area just a couple of months ago, we had a trans woman just down the road from where I lived who was stabbed just for being trans. So it's not a problem elsewhere, it's a problem here just as much. Hate crime in the UK is going up, and I think that's why Trans Day of Remembrance is just so important as looking at the more positive things or raising awareness about sort of terminology or the process of transition and things like that. And it's important that we remember the impactions have and the misinformation and the lies and all of this have on people's lives.
Do you have any message for trans people who are listening, or anybody that wants to know more about supporting the trans community?
I think for me, firstly, for any trans people who are listening, my most important thing is to know that you are seen, you are valued, you are loved, you are supported. We're here for you if you need it. Please get in contact if you need it. If you don't feel confident contacting people at the hospital, at the trust, there's a local charity called Heart Gables who are absolutely amazing, and I would recommend anyone, trans people or their families, if you need any support, get in touch with them. because they're brilliant people there. For allies, I would say being supportive doesn't mean being perfect. Listen and learn where you can, but don't let a lack of knowledge be a barrier to empathy. Understanding isn't a prerequisite of empathy, but empathy is a prerequisite of understanding.
I was chatting to someone the other day, and they said to me, never let perfect get in the way of the good. I think that's there's a truth at the heart of that. I think what I would say, and this is echoing something that Matt and I have chatted about at other times, is that the message out there to other trans and other allies is that you're not alone. There are people to chat to. There are safe spaces inside and outside the hospital, like Matt's just mentioned. But sort of as an ally, I would say that Matt is a fantastic place to go, and I love this idea of I am the epitome of not letting perfect get in the way of the good, or at least at the way of trying. The number of questions that I've been able to ask Matt and say, Matt, hang on, can I, and we have this sort of almost joke with each other where inappropriate question warning coming up, and Matt just looks at me and goes, come on then. And then I ask the question, and he very graciously answers it, and sometimes he goes, oh, actually that's a good one, I don't know the answer to that myself, I need to go and find out. And it's great just having that space to be curious and saying, look, I'm not trying to be offensive here, but this, I don't know the answer to this. Am I allowed to ask this? And as Matt's alluded, the importance of pronouns, but I've got to say with my nephew, it's taken a while. I'm getting a lot better now with he's rather than she's, but every now and again when you're in the middle of a conversation and it's going back and forth really quickly, sort of the wrong pronoun will slip out. Oh no, I'm really sorry. And my nephew just looks at me and just almost shrugs it off. Chatting to someone else in the trans community, they said, oh, families get a free pass. And because we've just been so involved and so familiar with other pronouns. But my experience in my family is that we're all on board, we're all really supportive. We can see undeniably that this person is much more themselves, and we just want to love them, we just want to support them, we just want to be there. But their graciousness to us, that we're not always perfect, it is a wonderful thing. So I would say, look, you're not alone. There are people to chat to, and there are allies out there who also may not be perfect, but we want to be curious, we want to ask questions, we want to find out the best way to support you in whatever journey you're going through at the minute.
And before we go, Matt, is there any contact places that is different to the hospital one?
Yeah, so if you aren't able to get in contact with us at the Trust, the best place I would advise people to go is Hart Gables. They're a local LGBTQ plus charity who support the whole community and their families and allies, and I can't recommend them highly enough.
Jim, Matt, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Till next time, you've been listening to NTH Voices.